they've noticed that more valuable, more entertaining, more relevant content tends to get shared more. And so probably as a result of that, they've started to prioritize or to rank that a little bit higher in their algorithm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond Social podcast. I'm Reggie, one of your hosts, and this is the show where we go behind the scenes on how marketers are doing amazing things, driving results for themselves, their brands, and their customers. Today, Vitaly and I, we've been reading through the questions that we've been getting from our customers at vistasocial, from our viewers, from our listeners, and we just want to take a little bit of time today, go through them, see if we can shed some insights, shed any light.
And I'm looking at some of these questions just as I was preparing for them, so hopefully I can do a good job in answering them.
The first one I feel like is super common. I hear this all the time. Our support team bring it up, our sales team bring it up. It's brands, their agencies, social media managers are really trying to figure out, how do I show return? How do I show an ROI to my leadership team, my executive team, specifically around social media, right? Like there's vanity metrics. We can talk about views. We can talk about this. We can talk about that. But ROI specifically, how do we showcase that to leadership?
Yeah, so I think at the onset, you're certainly needing to look at the top level metrics when it comes to social media performance. Your views, your impressions, your likes. Once you are kind of done capturing those, you would probably look at some of the more sort of meaningful ones like engagement rate. So you want to know for every impression, how many likes did you get? That's also going to probably speak volumes about the quality of the data. But still, that would not answer the question of the ROI. How much of that actually translates into business? And I think this is where you would need to set up what's called attribution tracking. And simply put, it's your way of knowing where the traffic is coming from when people convert, whatever the conversion means for your business, whether it's sales or signups for a service, appointments, whatever the case. And the mechanics of that are no different than the mechanics of tracking organic search traffic. So basically, you need to think of the links you're going to use on your social profiles. You want to make sure that the links in your bio sections have the proper UTM codes on them. You want to make sure that those UTM codes are then flowing into your Google Analytics, which means your website and whatnot has to have those Google Analytics. And then essentially, once you have that, you would have already a fairly good basis for knowing where the traffic is originating. And if you are tracking conversions using GA, then simply drop a script. But I think one other item that I would definitely recommend is setting up self-attribution. So when people buy, make sure that they answer the question also as to how they found sort of your product. It's possible that they might have seen your video on YouTube or on Instagram days later, for whatever reason, they went directly and purchased it. So you might lose out on that sort of direct attribution. So again, it's a little techy, but setting up attribution, which means links with UTM codes, feeding into like GA, for example, Google Analytics, and then some self-attribution questions on the website just to kind of play it safe and capture it all.
Almost a natural progression there. So if you're just getting started, maybe you don't have the technical expertise and knowledge or the resource to be able to do, like, let's say the technical attribution, maybe starting with self-attribution. Simple drop down or a text box at your checkout that just says, hey, how did you hear about us? That should hopefully get enough data in at the onset for you to have a good knowledge, right, of what's happening.
I think that one might require, obviously, like updates to the website and whatnot. So it's hard to say which one is going to be easier and for whom. I feel like finding an expert that can set you up with a few links, especially in an organization setting. I'm sure there's somebody like that.
Sure.
Just get the right links in place with the proper UTM codes. UTM codes, for those that don't know, are simply these parameters, these add-ons to the link that are informing Google as to where the traffic is coming from. So subsequently, you can easily tell, 20% of our traffic came from Instagram. And as a result, let's say 5% of conversions came from that. So,
got it. Okay. So this one comes up a lot as well. And I think once we started doing some analytics around boost, paid versus organic, this question started coming up more often, which is, how do I figure out that balance as an organization on paid versus organic, right? Like how do I make sure that as I'm starting to invest more in paid content, that I don't lose that connection with my audience, that authenticity in the content that I'm creating?
I don't think these are competing factors. So you do organic just because that's what you must do if you are on social. and then you do the paid or the boosting of those posts, if through some A/B testing you can prove the outcomes.
Mm.
So I think the ads aren't there to build relationships. Ads are there to promote stuff. Oftentimes, your organic content is going to be very different from your sort of promoted content, which could be more bottom of the funnel, more asking versus giving, perhaps, right? So I don't think it's, perhaps the question is kind of phrased in a way that kind of maybe is a little misleading. So I think you definitely have to do a ton of organic, and then you could definitely try the paid. With paid, you just need to be sure to track, again, the conversions and whether it's working for you based on your customer sort of acquisition cost metrics or whatever.
So some of our more successful brands or agencies that work with us, it's been really interesting. What they've found is that if they can really execute organic well, they'll be able to find points about their content, the strategy, the way that they created the content, and to be able to reproduce or recreate that piece of content for their paid media. And that'll drive better results, right? So they'll be able to optimize for better results because they've been already able to see the success organically. So that could be a variable when we're talking about not necessarily paid versus organic, but maybe if you're starting out, at what point should you do paid? I would probably say it could be smart to start with organic, really hone in the content, the creation piece of things, the quality. Start seeing that the audience is engaging well, probably double down on that piece of content and see if you can recreate it, reproduce it into something that would work for paid.
Paid increases your ability to reach audiences that perhaps algorithms purely, right, don't necessarily get you in front of, for sure. So even from that perspective, you may not be seeing necessarily maybe the conversions of the purchases and whatnot, but if you see clear spikes in, let's say, followership or viewership on your organic content as a result of that. So in my opinion, every brand would experiment with paid one way or another. I would just recommend not doing it just mechanically, as in, every post gets a $5 boost or something, but do it more strategically. Like you said, look at content that works, try to boost it or try to promote it, see how that works. But yeah, to me, these are non-competing sort of processes.
So from like an organic perspective, these algorithms are changing so often, right? Like one day, the next day, a month later, what's working really well from you overnight could basically shift. And obviously there's an element there to public interest, public opinion on a specific topic. But what would you say to those who are asking, how do I stay on top of these? How do I stay ahead of algorithm changes to make sure that I'm consistently showing up for my audience or for new audiences across social?
Yeah, somehow I feel like this question is rooted in the spirits of how people always feared Google algorithms and how they were shifting, and how the whole business of websites and SEO had to always get readjusted because people would always, SEO experts out there would always find ways to perhaps manipulate Google's algorithm by throwing a lot of keywords and whatnot, and Google would then come back and become smarter, and they would have to then try to find other ways. So I feel like SEO game was like full of that. What's the latest with the Google algorithm kind of mentality? I think with social networks, I don't feel like the algorithms have changed in principles over time, meaning that the underlying principle is that it's in network's interest to promote content that's interesting to the user. It's not in their interest to promote like specific users or specific content. They don't necessarily discriminate, in my opinion. So I think fundamental principles of good content as well remains. Some changes certainly do exist, as we've recently sort of discussed on one of our episodes, is that Instagram is really looking heavily at shares in DM specifically. So if before you might have thought that maybe comments were enough or likes were enough of a factor, now you will need to look at your content and see how much time is being shared in DM specifically, because somehow Instagram feels that this is the highest characteristic of a content that's truly shareable. But I think that doesn't, for sort of the day-to-day marketing operation, it's not so much about the algorithms, but it's about more how your specific content is performing. I don't think the algorithms are out there to just change the name of the game, right?
Yeah, I think whoever maybe has this question or thinking through this, I think the question is less, how do I stay ahead of the algorithm, but how do I keep my content relevant to the audience, right? Like you said, with Instagram's change to shares, I think it's less that they now think shares are more important. I think it's probably on the other side of that. It's that they've noticed that more valuable, more entertaining, more relevant content tends to get shared more. And so probably as a result of that, they've started to prioritize or to rank that a little bit higher in their algorithm. But think about the quality of the content, the relevance of your content in relation to your audience versus thinking, how do I hack the algorithm?
Yeah, and I think that's has always been the case, right? Quality content performs best. I think maybe one thing that changed over these years, over the past few years anyways, is that sort of the impact that number of followers has on your performance. We clearly see that brands and sort of profiles that have very few followers or not enough tend to like outperform. I think we had a case on our own Instagram channel recently where I think we have just a few thousand followers, not that many, I suppose, by certain standards. But we had like one of our reels reach, I think, almost like 5 million views. So clearly nothing to do with your followers, but all to do with your content.
Yeah.
I think our entire office was laughing because the content was hilarious. I kind of found it average, perhaps. But
For sure.
another 5 million people did find it hilarious, apparently.
Yep.
So I think these things just continue to be the most important factors.
Yeah, relevance, engagement. So when we talk about content, when we talk about relevance, question that comes up a lot is like, what type of content should I be posting on Facebook versus Instagram versus LinkedIn? And I think, look, everybody is fighting against, maybe not everybody, a lot of people are fighting against the trend to make videos. It's so much time. It's so much investment. It's almost like, hey, is it okay for me to not make videos and still be successful? I think videos are here to stay. I think we're seeing pivots in things like LinkedIn, optimizing for videos, testing vertical video formats as priorities in their algorithm. Like, if you're not making videos, I would highly suggest it, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Again, I think it boils down to what specifically works for your brand. I think certain networks are obviously video pretty much only, like TikTok. So you're going to have to do videos if you want to be on there. So you need to think twice whether you have to be on it. Are your customers on there? Why are you on TikTok? Clearly, it's more laborious, difficult to create videos. For example, for LinkedIn, I've noticed a lot of pushback when people post too many videos. It seems that people on LinkedIn seem to prefer a longer form text format that's sort of formatted with bullets somehow. I don't think there is any way to predict or even recommend the particular type of content versus another content. You might be even on LinkedIn operating in different circles of connections, and certain type of content is going to be more prevalent than other types of content. So it's all very situational. I think one observation that I would make is sort of what I've noticed is that it's definitely not the quality of the content, it's production quality that makes the content succeed. To some degree, I even suspect the opposite, is that the less produced the content appears to be, because perhaps people have gotten so inundated with ads, promoted content, and anytime they kind of just, as they scroll, right, and they see something that appears to be very polished and very sort of prepared and sort of carefully thought through, it creates that impression that there is a sort of a marketing message. And versus if you just see something that's less produced, it's perhaps more genuine as a result, more interesting. That I've certainly seen, but more of just an observational.
Fair. So this question came up as well. We were seeing about managing brands, clients. The question is, how do I effectively manage and grow multiple social accounts for different clients or brands without sacrificing quality? So let's talk about the quality piece. What do they mean about that? And then how do we?
Yeah, so I think when you run an agency, right, so you have to be worried about so many different things because you've been entrusted to manage social presence for brands. I remember the time years ago when we had the Office of Prime Minister of Great Britain connect their profiles to Vista Social. And I felt very sort of weird about that because I felt that all of a sudden, the level of responsibility is that much higher, right? That such, these were the wild, wild west days of social media almost a decade ago. And I think they didn't think twice about what they were doing, giving credentials to such an important Twitter account. But I think agencies have to worry about the safety and security of the data that they've been entrusted with. And there's really no way of doing that unless you have a process where you don't store passwords to client social profiles. In your onboarding of your customers, you got to have a process with which your customers can connect the profiles without entrusting necessarily you with access. I think most of the SMM platforms, vistasocial included, offer that. I think you have to have the data for all your customers clearly segregated and levels of controls in place to make sure that clients don't get to see each other's data, that your employees are properly granted access to certain clients. Again, most of the SMM tools, including vistasocial, kind of offer that. And you want to have vast capabilities around pushing content, scheduling content, preparing content. You want the set of tools that's going to allow you to create content once, publish it on all platforms, because you can't possibly try to get the single piece of content onto multiple networks and do that under like a normal sort of time allotment. And lastly, you want reporting. So you want the tools to actually inform both you and your customers. So it all spells one thing and one thing only. You got to have the tool in place. And these tools these days, it's an established market, as they call social media management tools. And again, vistasocial is one of them.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to show up, but also be able to do that in an efficient manner, right? Because I mean, sure, obviously you could hire somebody to go in and spend their entire day taking a client's content, publishing on TikTok, then taking the next piece of content and going to Facebook. But efficiently, there are tools out there that will definitely help.
But you know what's going to happen if you do that? So not only is that not efficient, remember the cases when a client owns an Instagram account to which they're logging in from their phone. Let's say they are in location in New York. And let's say you happen to be here in Miami, right? And right away, and you are now managing that customer social, and you log in into their account in Miami. Instagram thinks that's just not possible. There's no time machine. People don't travel that fast, and they'll lock up that account. How many times have we seen that happen?
Yeah.
So I think it's not even a matter of logistics or somehow you're going to run your business faster. Like there's no other way. Just even if you wanted to do it directly, you're just not going to be able to do it unless you run into these risks.
Right. So when we talk about, I mean, we talked about tools already, right? But more along the lines of managing sentiment, and this could play into PR. This could play into just overall brand sentiment. But if I want us to stay on top of brand sentiment, I want to understand the themes of the things that my customers or my audience are talking about on social. How do I do that?
Reporting. I mean, you need to find a platform that's able to sort of ingest all of the comments off of all your feeds, all your messages, put it through sentiment analysis. And ideally, you would also want to benchmark all of that against some industry stuff. As an example, I mean, maybe in certain businesses, certain level of negative feedback is quite acceptable. Maybe in certain businesses, and even if you get certain understanding that maybe sentiment around customer service is not ideal within your brand, certainly it will be a sort of a signal to maybe improve things. But at the same time, you would need to know up to which level. So, and this is where the industry benchmarking would become important. Something that we certainly offer within vistasocial, both the sentiment analysis and ability to compare to profiles and businesses in similar space. Can speak about other tools, but essentially those would be the two features you would need out of your tool that you're using.
When we talk about trending conversations, right? So beyond maybe what people are talking about when it comes to directly engaging with my brand, is there a way for me to stay on top of just industry conversations or conversations that I want to be able to listen in on that aren't exactly happening in my specific profile or in my space?
If you are looking for an accurate depiction, accurate results, the answer is no, there isn't. Most of the social data is private. As an example, whatever you publish on your Instagram cannot be accessed by any tool or analysis tools out there.
Not efficient.
Well, I think even if I haven't seen tools that try to scrape that information out of profiles, so it's just too difficult. These networks are so advanced these days; they don't allow that.
And sure, volume.
I mean, they have had enough congressional hearings to to know better. So I think that's also that's an interesting topic, right? It kind of falls under sort of global listening. I want to know certain trends. To some degree, trending data is available publicly, even by most platforms. They will probably tell you, some of the hashtags that are trending, things like that. I think I've seen certain asks where people want to know with a lot of specificity what people are thinking about a particular topic. These are practically impossible data points to extract. As in, I'm sure Facebook and Meta has them.
Sure.
I just haven't seen them offer that to anybody for sale or for any.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very difficult space. I think a lot of decisions would probably need to be made more with respect to your own brand and with some industry benchmarking where possible, versus trying to ask this sort of meaning of life kind of questions. What do people think of eating green apples?
Sure. I think some of the organizations that we've been speaking at, we've been asking about these sort of functionalities. A lot of the conversation is less geared towards like, hey, we want to understand everything that's going on for this specific topic. And it's really been a little bit more two different camps almost. It's been like, hey, sometimes brands or our audience, they forget to mention us, forgot to use the handle.
Oh, I see.
And they're aware that like, hey, we're not going to be able to capture every single variation of someone on Instagram and on TikTok, because a lot of these networks are closed down. They almost come already with the knowledge that it's not going to be possible to get everything from every single network.
Yeah.
And they're usually pretty okay with like the restrictions of like, let's say X and maybe Blue Sky and Reddit and blogs and things like that. But in the notion of like, hey, can I capture mentions when they just forgot to mention me? But then on the second camp to that is like, hey, I want to be part of conversations, almost like a lead gen thing, right? I target, and I think we talked to Daniel earlier about this, like, my business, we target plumbers who make under a certain amount of money, who need help, and they live in, I don't know, Louisiana, right? How do we do that, right? Is it possible to be part of that conversations, to engage, to provide value when they're not talking to me directly?
I think, as I said, with sufficient degree of accuracy, it's not possible. But if accuracy or completeness of results is not relevant, if you're just looking for a sample of that data, then 100%. So a lot of those searches are possible. You'll get certain results, and chances are be quite a lot of those results. I mean, even Twitter, for example, will give quite a bit of search data as an example. Again, if you're okay with the sample of the data, if that's if you understand that that's the limitation, then perfectly fine. Yeah, so the data is there. I was just thinking more of like, I want to know like with substantial degree of accuracy.
There.
Anytime somebody mentions, New York pizza, those 3 words, I want to have every mention from Twitter in my mailbox. Can't happen.
There. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and let's be realistic. Even if it was possible, what's the likelihood somebody would be able to actually analyze that individually? I can't physically go through 500,000 tweets in a day to learn about a certain topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say certain keywords might be, consider Twitter. Twitter is just has always been absolutely mad when it comes to volume. I remember once they had a feature where tools could have subscribed to like a fire hose of data from Twitter. We could literally sign up. This is probably about a decade ago, maybe more at this point, and get every tweet out of Twitter. That used to be possible. I think Blue Sky has that today. God knows for how long they're going to have that. But what was remarkable is that we went in and we subscribed. We were like, okay, we're going to get every single tweet now. But what we realized quickly is that the velocity of the incoming feed was so fast, and our quite powerful machine was just accepting that. But I guess it was one machine that was accepting all of Twitter's traffic, which I'm assuming is like hundreds or maybe thousands of machines. And it was literally just choking our machine. And at some point, Twitter would just quit sending us stuff by saying, you're consuming it too slow. Millions upon millions per minute. So basically, we, at any kind of tool, can't even consume all the data. Chances are you cannot consume all the results for the New York pizza, because chances are just the word apple or something, I'm sure it's in the millions. So I think like from that perspective, dealing with those outcomes like results is pretty meaningless when you have millions of them. Maybe some statistical data could have been great if that was available. As to what do people think of green apples kind of questions. Unfortunately, networks don't kind of make that kind of queries possible these days. But sample of the results, give me 100 results from yesterday that contain New York pizza. That's 100% possible.
Nice. All right. So the next one here is more with like collaborating with influencers. And we talked a little bit about the safety and security, but how can I collaborate with influencers while ensuring brand safety and measurable impact?
I think this is just, one of those things where once you are on the path of working with influencers, you are using them for their clout.
Mm-hmm.
And if certain amount of brand risk is not acceptable, that's just probably not a good option for you, unless perhaps you're viewing influencer relationship as in, hey, here's my ad, show it. Chances of that sort of succeeding are probably low. So you're probably going to the influencer to where he would do things in his own way and her own way to kind of present it to their audience. And I think this is when you're just going to have to take that risk. I'm assuming you can probably create like an approval process there. But if you're trying to scale an influencer sort of process and have like dozens, if not hundreds, you're going to have to like accept that risk. And I mean, likely influencers are nothing but people. It's like anybody out there, I don't know if you got like sneakers or something, anybody can be out there wearing your sneakers, doing things that you may consider to be inappropriate to your brand, and you have no control over that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a brand risk when it comes to influence? It's just a person posting stuff wearing your gear, right? So what is this? Elon Musk sends, I don't know why, but they sent a Tesla to this guy in Caucasus, this warlord, I forget his name. Yeah, so they sent I guess they sent it to all the countries, and it ended up in one of these countries, right? So, and the guy goes all out, and he puts like what did he put? Like a gun. He mounted they put like an automated gun onto the Tesla, and they started taking pictures. Clearly not a good brand image. But what can you do about it? I think the only thing they did is they electronically, remotely disabled the vehicle so they wouldn't be driving. So, but I mean, you can't control it. It's social, right? People will do whatever they want with your brand.
Yeah, I think it really starts with, and again, I guess kind of going back to the conversations we have with some of our most successful brands and agencies who partner with influencers, almost as much, if not more effort needs to be put on vetting the right influencers. Because I think that in itself is already going to decrease so much of that risk to the brand, equity, the brand in itself. So it's like, okay, then what does that mean to an influencer? Is it just like, hey, they post good content and they get good numbers? Okay. We've already talked about like how views may not really mean much, right? But if you notice that they've got a good track record of brands continuously working with them, that they seem to be pretty in touch with your ideal client that you want to get in front of, then I think at that point, when you've vetted an influencer, it's almost more important for you to trust that they know how to show up for their audience. They know they wouldn't have been able to be influential if they didn't know how to talk about that topic in the way that resonates with their audience. So just trusting them to take what your end goal is for that campaign, allow them to deliver the message in a way that they know will hit home and will drive those results.
And I think also let's make sure we're not giving legal advice. Like I'm sure there are like situations where you want to make sure that influencer doesn't like overpromise like certain, I don't know, cures or, solutions. But I think in the broad sense of things, there's little control. You probably should even think about that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One more thing I was going to say, because I thought this was interesting. This came up on a customer call a couple of weeks ago, where they realized that they could use some competitor analysis to monitor a potential influencer they want to work with, to look at their relative engagement. Because they have good big follower count and they get good decent views, but being able to look at like a 30, 60-day period and see what their average engagement looked like, what their post types were.
And that's really just fantastic example, which just should all remind us that everything on social is public.
Yeah.
So meaning that you can see the performance of your competitor, you can see the performance of your influencer. There's no mystery there, right? Yeah. So, I mean, contrast that with certain promises that people make around getting you included on a mailing list. Our mailing list has 100,000 whatever people on it, pay us to be on it. It's impossible to predict the outcome. On social, it's very different. You can look at their content. You can more or less spot the ones that have been sponsored, and you can see the engagement rate. Very easy to do.
Yeah.
Across all the network.
All right. Next one here. We're looking at AI, right? I know we've had a couple of conversations so far about AI. What's the best way to integrate AI tools into my workflow for scheduling, captions, writing, or reporting without losing the human touch? And that's interesting, right? Some people might think it's an oxymoron, AI, human touch. There's definitely a dance, a collaboration between the two. What are some of the things that someone can do to not lose the humanity, I guess, behind?
First of all, I think it's a big question if people can spot AI already. I certainly have been on the receiving side in a particular sort of project that I have where I'm faced with having to review questions and answers and comments from users. And I'm just astounded by how much AI there is, and just because of how similar it is to one another, right? Because AI has a particular style, so you can spot it right away. It certainly bothers me when I see it, because in that one project that I'm referring to, I'm actually looking for actual human participation, and seeing AI responses just is so misplaced, almost sort of disrespectful to the cause of what we are trying to do. But fundamentally, I think it's not the sort of dehumanizing sort of thing here that probably people need to worry about. They need to worry about what, if they are generating, let's say, AI content, they would need to worry about, is there any risk from the sort of the algorithm perspective on networks? Because they are definitely able to detect it. Just go Google AI detection. There are dozens of them around out there now. You AI generate text, they would determine it with 100% accuracy. So I'm not wrong when I'm saying that I can detect it because of the similarities. Like algorithms just do it. Like chances are they use AI to detect AI. So so it's like a full circle at that point. So, but I think at the same time, obviously AI is upon us, and I think there are many, as we see, for example, in our team, we do find uses for AI in many different places. It helps us with understanding questions that users are asking. It helps us with sometimes not so much even that the question that the user is asking, we need to understand, but sometimes the user sort of didn't use the right wording when putting out the question. So we'll use AI to kind of complete those questions. So we find usage right in that. So certainly within scheduling to social, there are certain usages of AI that are just amazing, right? For example, you can certainly ask AI, which is built in our case, into vistasocial. You can use AI to help you generate your brand voice. It can help you generate a caption, help you create some ideas, help you come up with the joke, help you find the right quote. Just, the sky is the limit. Do you just want to entrust it with the social messaging and just kind of be done with it? I think realistically, I have no proof today that it would somehow negatively impact your social presence. There is chatter out there these days that networks would somehow frown upon sort of using of AI. Very anecdotal, sort of no proof to that. So I think content creation, generation, ideation, I think responding to comments, right? Particularly the ones that are maybe centered around how do you do this, how do you do that, right? So those we've tackled them before, if you remember, with pre-saved answers. Now they're easily done with just AI who just figures things out for you. So I think AI is upon us, and there is no need to fear it or not embrace it. I think it's just we as people will just kind of learn to live with it and use it and accept it. But I think the question here specifically was human touch. I think the human touch I wouldn't worry about too much, simply because I think I'm bothered by it, but will I be bothered by it in 5 years when everything is AI generated? Who knows? Like I might just accept it, so it's probably okay.
Yeah, I think if an organization has a brand tone, brand voice policy, or documents that outline that, it definitely doesn't hurt to use that in either a prompt or in a trained model, so that it sounds a little bit more like the brand. I think it definitely can help in that regard. But
the brand safety is a better example, right? So this is where AI just works amazingly well. You tell AI, and we have that in our system, where you can basically just define, I want to make sure that my brand does not do this, this, or that. I want to make sure the profanity is never used in my sentences. I want to make sure that no derogatory statements are ever made about this or that, right? You put that in, and then we then execute AI verification on every post you do. So you as a brand managing social, you would know that your team would never post the content that contains that or respond to a customer with that in mind. That's very powerful. It's like one of the examples where AI just shines. It's perfect for these kind of things.
Yeah. The sheer resource you'd need to check every single thing, go through every single policy,
and not have false positives, right? So all of that, yeah.
Okay. Last one here. How do I convince my company to allocate more resources or budget to social media efforts? And I think this is probably full circle. It comes back to question number one. How do I prove ROI? And that's how you get your company or your agency or your client to allocate more resources, more money, more time. It's show ROI. Every business owner is happy to put more money into something that's bringing more revenue and more profit to the business, at least.
Yeah, I think the question is also sort of just maybe phrased a little sort of biased, right? So maybe the person who's asking is the social media manager,
right?
And they're like curious, can more budget be allocated to the work that I do? I think ultimately that's not how the businesses operate. Businesses sort of do things that make sense for the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's whether it's on social or not on social, it wouldn't even matter. So I think in order for more budget to be allocated, you're just going to have to find the right metrics, implement the right tracking, improve the value.
Yeah.
And without that, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, that's really step one. Yeah. If you don't have a way to calculate that return, and that ROI doesn't have to be dollar amount, right? Every organization is going to have a different success metric for themselves. But if you're not even tracking that or have a milestone or a goal for that, it'll be hard to have that conversation. Hey, can you double my budget or give me a raise?
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Vitaly. I know we had tons of questions. I'm sure we'll do this one again very soon.
I like the format. I think we should do that again for sure.
Absolutely. So you heard it. If you have any questions that you're dying to hear either from us, from some of our top clients, or we can bring in a guest as well, shoot it over to us. You can find us at vistasocial.com/podcast. And maybe you want to join us for a future episode. We'll fly you in here to this awesome studio in Miami. Thank you for the team here helping us get set up and going. Make sure you check us out on Spotify, all the channels that we're on, and we'll see you on the next one.